Welcome to the Remarkable Dentist Podcast with me, Fred Joyal, where I interview amazing dental practice owners digging into their successes and failures, their insights and hindsights, getting their views on where dentistry is going, and discovering what it took for them to become remarkable. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Dentist Podcast. I'm Fred Joyal, and I'm here today with Mark Johnson, who is founded a really interesting company that's going to deal with dental student loans, which is something near and dear to almost every graduate, and also several people still in dental school. So, Mark, welcome to the show. Give us a rundown of who you are and how you got started in this.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. It's a pleasure being on your show today. Yes, I've been in the wealth and investment industry for going on 30 years. I'm a partner at RBF Wealth Advisors in St. Louis, Missouri. And 7 years ago, I kind of had an aha moment. I got invited to do an investment presentation to a group of dental residents here in St. Louis. And after I talked about investing and the importance of having a budget and some insurance planning items like life and disability insurance. And afterwards, a handful of that year's graduates came up to me and said, we'd like to visit about starting an investment account, but did you know that we're graduating with between $400,000 and $750,000 of student loan debt? And I was just blown away. I had no idea. I'd heard that there was a student loan crisis. It hadn't touched our family. None of my clients, none of my wealth management clients had approached me with any concerns of their children or grandchildren. And so I was completely ignorant that you could even get that much in student loans, number one. And then I thought, well, how are these dental soon-to-be graduates, orthodontists in that case, how are they going to be able to pay back that much in student loans? So I started asking some questions like, does the school, provide you with any resources, or has there been somebody else come in and buy you pizza that's talked about student loan repayment planning? And they said, no, we're kind of left up to our own to figure this out. And the light bulb went off, and that was the genesis for StudentLoansRx. And so what we do is we help our clients build comprehensive financial plans around their student loan debt and plan for those other important financial matters that, if you got $300,000-$400,000 in student loan debt, whatever you decide to do with that's going to impact all those other areas of your financial life. So that's our mission, and that's what we've been engaged in for the last several years.
So my understanding of undergraduate student loans, and I'm going to say what I think I know, which is I haven't been in college in a while, but that tends to be at 3% interest.
Oh no. It's much
undergraduate.
Undergraduate.
Postgraduate.
Yeah, I would say undergraduate loans are probably in that 4 to 5% range. For those that are getting ready to graduate now from like dental school. A lot of folks have carried some of that over into their graduates, so 4 years of dental school. But my average client now, interest has been turned off for 2 years because of COVID. Right. On March 13th, 2020, President Trump suspended interest and payments on student loans because of COVID. And President Biden has further extended that a couple of times until May the 1st of this year. And so, but for those folks that are going to be graduating this year or graduated the last 2 years, their average interest rate on their student loans on whatever that is, average dentist graduates with about $300,000. That's around 6.25%, 6.5%.
Yeah, so that's getting up there. That accrues nicely. I remember when it was down at 3%, and that's cheap money. But obviously, right. You don't want to carry $500,000, But that's essentially it's like they own a home, but they don't get to live in it. It's like they have a mortgage that they're paying on, but no home to go with it because their student debt is so enormous.
Right. And since they've been, in school for 8 years, 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of dental school. And then if they go on to residency, it could be another, 1 to 4 or 5 years if they go on to oral surgery. This has been kind of percolating underneath. It's kind of like a volcano, maybe you see a little steam every once in a while, or you pay attention to it, but then, once you graduate, there's that eruption of, oh my God, I have to start making payments on, 3, 4, 500,000 of student loan debt. And, at the same time, we're talking about folks in their late 20s, early 30s. They're probably looking to get married at some point, start a family, buy a house, upgrade their transportation that they've been driving around, for 8 years perhaps. And so they've got all these financial issues kind of colliding at one time over, maybe a 3 to 5 year period of time. And maybe they want to be a practice owner. So that's where really having
it is a collision of debt with a pre-existing gigantic load. Now, have you seen 7-figure debt for people?
Oh, sure. It's rare. I don't know what percent, but yes, there are dental professionals out there with $1 million or more in student loan debt. I've seen couples that, they each have, they fell in love in dental school and they each have 500,000 in student loan debt. So yes,
well, couples can make money, but they don't come out of school immediately and start making $300,000 or $400,000. And as you said, they want to get a house. They want to get new cars, and they've got to look at acquiring some level of ownership in a practice. That option disappears with enough debt. But their banks love to lend to dentists in general, but they'll only tolerate so much debt load, debt service going on.
Right. So it's the debt service that really messes things up. And that's where it's critical that if you want to be a practice owner, which I think is, by the way, the best student loan repayment strategy is to become a practice owner as soon as possible. And so it's the debt service though. Banks, which sounds crazy, banks really don't care how much you have in student loan debt. Okay. What they care about is what's your monthly payment. So that's where figuring out, the right repayment plan comes into play. Because if somebody were to say, for example, I want to be a practice owner in 2 to 3 years, but before I do that, I want to knock down a lot of my student loan debt. I'm like, hold on a second. First of all, most banks are going to require somewhere between 5 and 10% liquidity to get the loan. So if you're going to get $1 million loan, they're going to want somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 of liquidity. Well, a first-year dentist makes $130,000, $140,000, and they've got living expenses. So if you want to be a practice owner in 3 years, how are you going to save $50,000 to $100,000 if you're super aggressive paying down student loan debt? That actually will work against you. So what we usually recommend in that situation is keep your payments low, go get your practice loan, and then let's revisit what's a good way to start knocking down those student loans after you get the practice loan. Keep your payments low until you get the practice loan.
That is really interesting, because there are a lot of people that say, I gotta crush this debt. I don't want to pay that much interest. So I'm gonna do everything I can to make this debt disappear in, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. How long do a lot of these loans go for?
So if you're on so there's basically two paths to go on. Most loans were issued through the federal government, right? So you went into the financial aid office and said, here I am, I need some money. And you got some loans through financial aid. So that's one path. The second path is maybe you picked up some private loans along the way, Sallie Mae, Discover, Wells Fargo, or some big providers. And so once you're approaching graduation, you have to decide, am I going to keep my loans in the federal program? And there's a number of repayment options there. There's a couple different standard payments. There's an income-driven repayment program. We should talk about that. And then the other side is private loans. And so right now, interest rates are at historic levels. So I was visiting with a client yesterday. She's been out of school for a couple of years now, and she's got about 200,000 left on student loans. And she's got a good job. She's making close to 200,000 left in student loans. And we're in the process right now of refinancing those loans. Again, her single individual, no dependents, good income. And she had some offers at 2.65 for 15-year refinance, 2.35 for a 10-year refinance.
Wow.
Okay. Now, interest rates are turned off right now until May 1st on federal loans. So the question is, should I hang out and wait until interest rates maybe get turned back on? And I said, listen, even if they extend it for another 3 or 4 months or whatever, eventually you're going to have to start making payments on these things. Well, she has been making payments, but the point is, I think if fast forward 2 or 3 years, we're going to be smiling. She's going to be smiling that she was able to lock in a refinance at under 3%. Now, a first-year dentist making $130,000, is maybe not in a position to do a 10 or a 15-year repayment schedule, because now we're looking at maybe they got $300,000-$400,000 in student loan debt. We're looking at maybe a $3,000 or $4,000 a month payment, and most of them aren't ready to swing at that, right? So income-driven repayment can be, which is a couple programs through the federal government, Department of Education hosts those, and they can be a good way to get started.
So I love the sound of something like that, because it's a very appealing, I think, to somebody who's trying to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to make money as they come out of school. So it's an income-driven repayment plan. This is the federal government has this?
Right. The Department of Education offers, there's actually 4 income-driven repayment plans. Only 2 of them pertain to graduates today. One of the other 4 is for parents that maybe had taken out Parent Plus loans to help their kids get through graduate school. But there's income-driven repayment is you graduate, and your payment is not going to exceed roughly 10% of your income. Okay, so if you're going to make $130,000 coming out of school, you're not going to have, your payment's going to be a little over $1,000 a month. Okay, so that's, if you got 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter how much you have in student loans, it's income driven, right? So it's based on your income. And so that can help folks get started. The downside to that is if you are on an income driven repayment plan, let's say you got $400,000 of student loan debt at 6%, that's $2,000 a month of interest.
Yeah, you're kicking a lot of interest down the road.
Yeah, so you're only covering half your interest in that scenario. Now there's 2 plans. One is called pay as you earn. The other one is called revised pay as you earn. It's a newer version of the other plan. And the government offers an interest subsidy. So they recognize on these income driven repayment plans that if you got all this student loan debt and you're starting out with 140, 150,000 of income, which is still a great income, right? For somebody graduating after, 8 years of school. Okay. But on this, they recognize, okay, some of these large borrowers are not going to be able to even cover their interest. So they have an interest benefit, and that interest benefit can be up to 50% of your interest accrual, depending on your income. And so it's important, things like they look at household income, on revised pay as you earn to determine, kind of what's your income. So if you're married, revised pay as you earn looks at both incomes for both spouses. They also look at student loan debt for both spouses. So if you're married to another dentist, you both have $400,000 in student loan debt, they're going to look at your combined income, but they're also going to look at your combined student loan debt to come up with a payment. If you're single, they're only going to look at yours. If you're married and your spouse has a good income, they're not a dentist, they don't have any student loan debt, then you might want to file your taxes separately and just have the payment based on your income. And then in that case, you'd have to sign up for the pay as you earn plan. So there's, again, 2 plans, pay as you earn, revised pay as you earn. And so what's critically important to anyone, as they're approaching graduation, we usually start visiting with people about 4 to 5 months before graduation as they're starting to get some job offers, right? To figure out, okay, if I take this offer, what's my payment going to look like? If I take this offer, maybe I'm going into public health, sometimes people will have an offer from a DSO, a private practice, and public health. And then we try to help them figure out, based on their career path, what is going to be the best repayment strategy.
So when's the best time? This is informed by what you're just saying. When's the best time for them to be talking to someone like you about their debt service?
I would say, if they're graduating, usually we start visiting with folks in January and February as they are approaching graduation from dental school. Or if you're 4 to 5 months, 4 to 5 months away from graduating from residency. Now, one thing, let me mention something about residency. So a lot of folks, when they go from dental school into residency, you're able to defer your student loans and not make any payments while you're in residency. Now, in the last 2 years, because of COVID, there's been no interest accrual. So
which
folks,
is a huge difference. You didn't
so if you got
defer payments, you didn't accrue interest, which is an enormous difference.
on
the entire loan.
Right,
you're not accruing interest.
Right, on $350,000, I crunched the numbers. $350,000, you've saved about $43,000 in interest in the last 2 years.
Wow.
That was just wiped out. So when they say, they're holding out for forgiveness of their loans, they need to keep in mind that,
much has been forgiven.
Yes, quite a bit has already been forgiven. But the point about going into residency is that a lot of residents just defer their loans while they're in residency. And under normal circumstances, which according to the president gets turned back on May 1st, interest starts accruing again. So while you're in residency, your student loans are accruing interest at maybe 6.25% to 6.5%. So what we encourage folks to do, let's say a resident gets paid $45,000 while they're in residency. That's probably the average across the nation, something like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a $300 a month payment. So if you can get on an income-driven repayment plan while you're in residency, yes, you might have to make a $200 or $300 a month payment. But if you qualify for this revised pay-as-you-earn, Uncle Sam could pick up almost half your interest. So if you have interest accruing at $2,000 a month, you make your $300 payment, that's $1,700 left over. Uncle Sam will pick up $850 a month of your interest, right? So instead of having, $2,000 a month of interest accruing while you're in residency, how about have $850 a month accruing? That's a significant amount of savings, especially if you're on like a 3-year ortho residency program or something. That's
enormous. So I want to revisit this and reiterate it because it's so interesting. It's a specific financial strategy.
Yes.
You would be saying, no, I'm in residency. I don't want to do any debt service. I don't make any money. But if they get into an income-driven repayment plan, however small it is, now the government is going to subsidize half the accruing interest. Because again,
up to half. So it's
up to half.
Up to half. And that's specifically on the revised pay-as-you-earn plan.
Right. The revised one, not just the income-driven one, but the revised one.
Their income-driven has really 2 plans that graduates or residents need to look at: pay-as-you-earn, revised pay-as-you-earn.
Yeah.
Revised pay-as-you-earn offers the interest subsidy, the interest benefit. Okay, and it gets a little complicated. Obviously, this is a government program, right? But the whole idea is if you're going on to residency, you need to crunch the numbers, and I'm highly confident, that you can scratch up $200 a month, get a side hustle and do DoorDash or something, right?
Yeah, nibble at that loan, and the government steps in and starts subsidizing the accrual of interest, which is accruing madly.
Yeah, why have your interest accruing at 6.5% in residency when it could be 3.5%, let's say?
Yeah, because it's on the whole dang principle. The principle's huge. So when you cut the interest in half, you're saving an enormous amount of money. As you said, just the stopping the interest accrual for the past couple of years has saved somebody $40,000, $50,000. And the bigger your loan, the more you're saving every day. But the more they're going to subsidize, the more dollar amount that's going to get subsidized. If you get $600,000 or $700,000, you want the government to step in, if they will, and knock half of that off, at least while you're in residency or while you're having a revised income payment plan. Now, when does that stop? How long do you get to do the revised payment plan?
So revised pay-as-you-earn, all the income-driven repayment plans can be extended anywhere from 20 to 25 years. Now, here's the kicker. So you're in residency, you're not getting paid much, right? But then when you graduate, your income goes to whatever, 150, 200 if you're an orthodontist or pediatric dentist, perhaps. And so every year on an income-driven repayment plan, you have to provide the government with a income document. So your payment's going to be X at 45,000 of income, and it's going to be X times 3 at 140,000 of income.
Yeah.
And so each year, as your income goes up, your payment on an income-driven repayment plan is going to go up as well. Now, I like to use income-driven repayment plans as kind of a bridge strategy. So I don't have any desire, and hopefully none of your listeners want to be making student loan payments as their first kid is going off to college, right? So my personal goal as a wealth advisor is to help my clients get in a position to knock these things out in, 10 years plus or minus. Now, I've had clients pay off 400,000 in 4 years. Now
dentists can really earn if they find the right practice in the right city. They can really knock back their debt if they have the discipline to do it. But you also have to be good at projecting out. You could say, oh, wow, I can spread this out over 25 years. Yes. And you're going to end up paying 3 times the money by the time you're done.
It's like, dental school at 400,000 or 500,000 seems like an awful lot of money. And, if you stretch out over 20 or 25 years, now it's $1 million to go to dental school. That seems kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. So I think people don't want to carry that, as you say. So at some point, your recommendation is to come in and restructure the debt generally, or
Yes.
it's on a case by case?
Well, it's on a case by case, but we've had, historically low interest rates, over the last several years. And then when COVID hit, interest rates even fell further. So it's been generally someone graduating, if they got 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, they're not really in a position to refinance because the payments are going to be much larger. But what I've been talking to, folks that are getting ready to graduate this year is like, maybe it makes sense just to refinance 100,000 or something. If we can lock that in at one of these very low, if you got 400,000, maybe we should just refinance 100 or 150,000. Because I have the Federal Reserve has said that they're raising interest rates. Matter of fact, tomorrow might be the first day, that they do that. They have their FOMC meeting tomorrow. Inflation is at, the highest it's been in 40 years. And so they've said that they're going to raise interest rates, perhaps as many as 4 times this year. Now, how long is it going to take for that to filter down to student loan refinancing is anyone's guess. But I think for those clients, those borrowers that are in a position, if we're having this conversation 3 years from now and they were able to say, I think they're going to be pretty happy if they could refinance it, lock something in at 3.5% or 3%. Now, again, that's assuming that they can make the payment, they can afford the payment. And I would say we also want to, like I said earlier, we don't want to get in a position where it's going to impede their ability to get a practice loan. And so, for those folks on the way to becoming a practice, maybe refinancing, is not a good idea right now because that's going to increase their monthly cost to service that debt, at least in the short term. And then, I just try to encourage folks on the path to being a practice owner, keep your consumer debt low. If you can even put off buying a house, a lot of these young professionals, they've never owned a home before. And as you know, I'm sure you're a homeowner. Home ownership is a lot more expensive than just the payment. right?
Yeah, it's the tip of the iceberg sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, till the bills start rolling in, uh, and then the water heater goes,
Yeah, the water
or
heater goes, or the
yeah,
HVAC, and new driveway, new roof. I mean, it adds up, and people don't think about that when they buy their first home. That you buy a $300,000-$400,000 home. I mean, you could easily set aside an extra 500-600 a month just for upkeep and repairs over time, right?
yes. So, do what sort of banks are interested in taking the student loan debt and refinancing? Are they just generally banks, or is it?
Some banks that we could rattle off the top 5 or 10 banks that come to mind. Some of those do private refinancing of student loan debt, but there's actually a whole cottage industry that's come up to service this type of debt. And so we help our clients kind of source that, figure out what's the best option. I mean, at the end of the day, you're really just looking for the lowest possible interest rate to meet the payment and the number of years. What's nice about student loan is there's no prepayment penalties, there's no closing costs. I mean, I've had clients that graduated, 5-6 years ago. We've refinanced their student loans a couple of times. As interest rates went down over the last few years, we might have started out with a 4.5% rate, and now they're sitting at 3.
And you would probably advise that interest rates aren't coming down. They've bottomed out and they're going the other way. It's just how fast.
I mean, if anybody pulls up an interest rate chart, go back to 1980, and all they see is a black diamond. If you're a
Yeah.
skier, all you see is a cliff going down, and it's hard to make a case that interest rates are going to go lower in an environment where inflation is at 7%. I mean, that's the number they throw around, but if you look at the real number is probably closer to 10 or 12%. The Federal Reserve is going to have to do something, and the only thing they really can do is to ratchet up interest rates a little bit. And so I'm not predicting that interest rates are going back to any mid 1980s or early 80s levels at this point, but the Federal Reserve has printed, U.S. Treasury's printed more currency in the last 2 years than they did in the previous 50 years since World War II.
Yeah.
And you got all these dollars chasing a limited amount of supply. We got some supply chain issues, right? It's hard to get a new Ford F-150 if you want to go buy a truck or whatever, and so interest rates are likely going up. Don't know where they're going to end up, but like I said earlier, if somebody can lock in, if it's appropriate, if it's right time for them to do this, refinancing with a private lender is probably not a bad idea to look at that.
Yeah, if you can lock in under 3% on debt, that's a pretty darn safe bet. Go reflecting back on the 80s, I once had to finance a car in 1981, 21% interest on the car loan.
Oh,
I basically bought 2 cars over the course of the 5-year loan. And so they're not going that way, but they're going up. And a lot of people, they don't understand variable mortgage rates and things like that. And so one of the best things somebody can do for themselves is really come away understanding debt. And I think that's part of what you offer, is get a clear view on how debt works and how you can manipulate it in your favor. And don't just think that you have intuitively a good sense of how to manage your debt. So I think it's really great what you've zeroed in on for these people, and really helping these people who are, banks consider dentists really good risk, generally speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah. The default rate on, dental practice loans is very, very low. It's a very high margin business. And it's a great business to be in. Great business to be in. But one thing that you had said earlier, Fred, was about variable rates. And my caution to folks that might be listening and might be considering a private refinance is, variable rates obviously can go up, and we're in a rising interest rate environment right now. And so my counsel generally is, lock in a fixed rate, because you might get some teaser variable rate right now at 2%, and you think that's wonderful, and 2 years from now it might be 5%. You just don't know. So that's just something. So, and again, and we understand that most dental professionals are not coming out of school with an MBA in finance. And so we try to help them create that financial plan, because at the end of the day, as a wealth advisor, we're really wanting to help them accumulate wealth. But if you're starting out in the hole at $300,000 or $400,000 with student loan debt, that's the first, and it might be the largest financial planning issue they'll ever face, in their life, but certainly in the first few years out of school.
Yeah, certainly, I would say probably in the first decade or more for most of them. So there's caution that you're advising here, which I think is really valuable, which is, before you go buy a house, lease a car, start loading on the other consumer category debt when you come out of school. I know you want a new car. I know you want a house. You want to start your life. You've been in school forever. But it's Mark is giving you such good advice to when you address your student loan debt first, you can come out way ahead. And there'll be certain things that you'll do that will make this much more difficult or much more expensive, or perhaps even not doable. So,
right. So just a little bit, exercise a little more patience. You're going to have a huge pickup in your lifestyle going from dental school or residency to your first job, right? You're going to be making some money. You're going to be able to have, as much fun probably as you had in dental school, and you'll be able to pay for it now. It won't be on borrowed money. And, if you can hold off buying a house for a couple years, I know that sounds like a long time to somebody who's 27, 28, 29 years old, when all their high school friends are, got a house and a couple kids and all of that. But just a little bit more patience, especially we're at probably the top of a real estate market anyway, because interest rates have been so low.
It's a good reason to wait, for sure.
Yeah, I think real estate prices are likely going to be, much more favorable in the next 18 to 24 months. And, a little more patience is going to pay off in spades down the road.
Yeah, and you're gonna have a long career of earning really well, and you want to be able to make this loan disappear. Part of it is being able to earn significantly as a dentist. The other is making sure you set it up right, so you're not paying way more interest way sooner than you need to. It's really requires a strategy and an understanding of it. And as you say, they don't come out of school with a lot of business understanding. Most people don't understand money, period.
No, it's true.
They're much more emotionally driven by their borrowing and their spending and their savings and then they think at 55, I think I need to start saving for retirement. And you get to talk to them and go, yeah, we need a time machine right now.
Yeah.
To
So
go
the
back
culture
20
is,
years.
the culture is all about, borrowing for everything. I mean, now you see Amazon buy now, pay later. There's all these types of platforms that are coming up. And so you're definitely swimming against the stream when you exercise a little discipline and patience with respect to consumer spending. But those are the folks that are going to have the multi-practice offices and the very, very successful businesses, because they didn't do what everybody else is doing, which is load up on more debt right out of school.
So how can people get a hold of you, Mark? You're obviously a good person to talk to.
Sure. So they can visit our website at StudentLoansRx.com. That's StudentLoansRx.com. We offer a free 30-minute consultation. And so if folks want to do that, they can hop on the website. Obviously, we have a resource page on there that's got, excellent podcasts. As soon as, This podcast will be on our website, and they'll be able to listen to this again. They can call me at 314-737-8123. That's 314-737-8123. I also have a secure text, which is 314-347-3499. And we understand how important it is for these young professionals that have invested 8 years, maybe as much as $400,000 or $500,000 in their education, to get a financial plan in place right out of the gate, so that they're pointed in the right direction. Because about 15% of our business is what I call redos. These are folks that graduated, didn't work with a professional, took some advice from an unqualified party, could have been a fellow classmate, could have been somebody on YouTube, who knows. And they got on the wrong plan, and they spent 2 years on the wrong plan, and could have saved thousands of dollars if they'd have been in the right plan right out of the gate. So that's our concern, is really try to help them graduate and get on the right plan right away.
Well, it's a great service you're offering. And as you said earlier, this is a government program. There's hoops to jump to and twists and turns in this. It's not what you would normally expect, even from normal lending. So you got to learn about it. You got to get control of all your debt early on, but this is a big part of your debt service. You want to deal with it as intelligently and strategically as possible. So I highly recommend working with Mark. Get a free consultation. Find out what you can do wherever you are. If you're 4 or 5 months from graduating, this is the time to talk to them. If you're out 3 years and you're saddled with a bunch of debt, this is the time to talk to them. It's the second best time, but it's time. So Mark, thank you very much for being on the Remarkable Podcast show. And this information will be in the show notes as well for you. And keep track of your money. You've got a great career. There's no reason to not thrive in it. So Mark, thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Nice to be with you today.
Bye, everybody. Keep on being remarkable.